and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu is currently in Washington, D.C. to meet with senior trade officials. Upon arrival in the U.S., Yo told reporters that the recent data breach at Coupang must be separated from trade or diplomatic issues. North Korea is calling for an explanation from South Korea after accusing the South of flying drones into its airspace. Seoul, however, has denied the claims, saying that no military drones were flown on the dates cited by the North. South Korea's ruling Democratic Party has elected a new floor leader. Three-term lawmaker Han Byung-do won the closely contested race and vowed to push forward key reform and livelihood bills at speed, while supporting the success of the Lee administration. We begin this morning with South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu's visit to the United States. Yo said Sunday that the massive data breach at Coupang should be separated from trade or diplomatic issues. Speaking to reporters upon arrival at Washington Dulles International Airport, he emphasized that the Korean government is not targeting or discriminating against any specific American company, including Coupang. He added that the core problem lies in the large-scale personal information leak at Coupang and the company's inadequate response. Yo is scheduled to meet U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, key lawmakers, and industry groups during his visit to clarify Korea's digital platform regulations and address any misunderstandings. Meanwhile, North Korea is demanding an explanation from South Korea after claiming drones from the South violated its airspace, with Kim Yo-jong warning of consequences if the flights continue. Seoul denies any military involvement, saying it's investigating whether the drones were launched by civilians while pledging to avoid escalating tensions with Pyongyang. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, is demanding an explanation from South Korea over what Pyongyang claims were drone incursions into its airspace. In a statement carried by North Korean state media on Sunday, Kim said drones flying from the Republic of Korea violated the North's sovereignty. Her comments came after South Korea's defense ministry denied that its military was responsible, saying the drones may have been launched by civilian groups. Kim welcomed that denial, but said Seoul must still explain what she called an actual drone that crossed into North Korean territory. She warned that any future flights, regardless of who launches them, would bring serious consequences. She also claimed video recovered from the drones showed sensitive North Korean sites, including a uranium mine, the Kaesong Industrial Complex, and border guard posts, which she said proves the drones came from the south. The comments come as North Korea's military claimed that a drone was detected on January 4th, flying north from Gangwon-do Island near Incheon and was forced down near Kaesong using an electronic warfare system. Pyongyang says the drone was carrying surveillance equipment. It also claims another drone flew from Paju in late September, crossed into North Korea, passed over Kaesong, and was brought down by an electronic attack system. The North says that the aircraft carried nearly 6 hours of video footage. Pyongyang also accused Seoul of hostile provocations while talking about dialogue and warned that such actions would not go unpunished. South Korea's defense ministry has rejected the claims, saying an initial investigation shows the drones were not operated by the South Korean military and that no military drones were flown on the dates cited. Defense Policy Chief Kim Hong-chul said authorities are now investigating whether the drones could have been operated by civilians. He added that Seoul has no intention of provoking North Korea and will continue efforts to reduce tensions and build trust between the two sides. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party is entering a new phase of leadership, following controversies surrounding its former floor leader, as it looks to steady itself ahead of key legislative battles and upcoming local elections. Our Moon Yeon has the details.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party has elected a new floor leader and 3 new members of its Supreme Council, following an internal shakeup that triggered an early leadership vote. After a competitive race that went to a runoff, three-term lawmaker Han Byung-do emerged as the new floor leader on Sunday, defeating fellow three-term lawmaker Baek Hae-ryun in the final round of voting. Han will serve out the remainder of his term, which runs until May, though the party has left open the possibility of a short extension to cover the June local elections. The party held a by-election to fill the vacancy left by former floor leader Kim Byung-gi, who stepped down amid allegations involving political donations and internal misconduct. His resignation left the powerful parliamentary post vacant months before the end of its original term, forcing the party to move up the election. The timing makes the role especially significant. The new floor leader will steer the party through negotiations on high-profile special prosecutor bills, including probes related to religious groups and broader corruption allegations, while also preparing for the June 3rd local elections. In his acceptance speech, Han pledged to push forward key reform and livelihood bills at speed, while supporting the success of the Lee administration. He also signaled a dual-track approach towards the opposition, open to dialogue but firm against what he called obstructionist politics.
From this moment on, I will swiftly bring a year of turmoil under control and urgently move to end the insurrection, reform the prosecution and the judiciary, and improve people's livelihoods.
Alongside the floor leader vote, the Democratic Party also held a by-election to fill 3 vacant seats on its Supreme Council, left open by members stepping down to run in the local elections. Lawmakers Kang Duk-gu, Lee Sung-yun and Moon Jung-bok were elected, with results reflecting a closely watched balance between different factions within the party. With both parliamentary leadership and the Supreme Council reshaped, attention now turns to whether the Democratic Party can stabilize internal divisions and maintain momentum ahead of the June polls. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it will send hundreds more federal officers to Minnesota following mass protests over last week's fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told Fox News on Sunday that the new deployment will take place over the next 2 days, adding to the roughly 2,000 federal officers already operating in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, in what the Department of Homeland Security calls its largest immigration enforcement operation ever. The move comes a day after the tens of thousands of protesters marched through Minneapolis, and more than 1,000 rallies took place across the United States over the weekend against deportation policies and the killing of Good. So the Trump administration's aggressive immigration crackdown has sparked protests across the United States, especially after the fatal shooting of a woman by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. For more on this, we're joined today by An Jun-sung, an attorney in South Korea. Mr. An, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So the Trump administration's immigration crackdown has sparked protests across the country, especially after the shooting in Minneapolis. It's now intensifying scrutiny of ICE use of deadly force. So can ICE agents legally use force or detain U.S. citizens?
Well, as a matter of law, Immigration and Customs Enforcement doesn't have the authority to detain or arrest or remove U.S. citizens for immigration purposes. ICE's statutory authority is limited to the enforcement of federal immigration law as applied to non-citizens. Therefore, any detention of a U.S. citizen by ICE, even if temporary, raises serious constitutional issues under the Fifth Amendment protection against unreasonable seizure. With respect to this, the use of force, ICE agents are bounded by the same constitutional standard, and which govern all federal enforcement officers. First, use of force may be objectively reasonable under circumstances, and second, the use of a deadly force is legally justified only when an agent has reasonable belief that there is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to the agent or to others. So deadly force may not be used solely to effectuate an arrest or to prevent flight. such as in this case. And when force is used against U.S. citizens outside this narrow legal parameter, it may expose the government, here in this case the federal government, and individual agent to internal discipline and civil liability in some cases and criminal investigation. The central legal issue is that whether the force employed was necessary, proportional, and consistent with the constitutional requirements.
I see. So can the ICE agent who shot Rene Good in Minneapolis be prosecuted? What charges might he face?
Well, at this stage, there are ongoing, federal and state investigation into the, federal shooting of, it happened in Minneapolis last week. And multiple inquiries, including the FBI and local prosecutors, are on the way, but no charging decision have not yet been announced. But however, from a legal standpoint, prosecution is not impossible, but it faces significant procedure and constitutional hurdles. Because under the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, federal agents generally enjoy immunity from state prosecution for the action taken within the scope of their official duties. Means that a state criminal case could be removed to the federal court if the agent asserts that his conduct was authorized by the federal law and he conducted in furtherance of such official function. So to proceed the prosecution, prosecutor would need to show that agent action was objectively unreasonable, outside the scope of his unlawful authority, or the clearly unlawful under the constitutional standard. The potential charge could range from manslaughter to the more serious homicide offenses under state law if the evidence supported that the use of deadly force was not justified. In addition, regardless of criminal liability, the victim's family may pursue civil claims for damages under federal civil rights statutes if they can show a violation of constitutional rights.
I see. And while that's happening, the Trump administration is also awaiting a ruling from the Supreme Court on tariff policies. Now, there have been speculation that it would be issued on Friday, but it seems to have been delayed, and it's now expected to come out on January 14th. Could you just explain what exactly is at stake and how do you think the ruling will play out?
Well, the main legal issue, the legality of broad tariff, which had been imposed by Trump administrations. And at this moment, it's not clear when exactly the U.S. Supreme Court comes out with the decision. However, when it does comes, the decision will address two specific issues. The first, whether the administrations can use the provision under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to levy the tariffs. And second, if not proper, whether and how much the U.S. will have to reimburse those importers who already have paid the duties. In my opinion, that U.S. Supreme Court would grant limited powers under the IEEPA to the Trump administration and thereby require only limited repayment of tariffs.
I see. And what happens after the ruling? What if the court rules that the tariffs are illegal?
Well, that's a very interesting question because if it happens, right, if the court find it is illegal or not proper under the statute, federal statute, means that they have to reimburse that importers about whatever the payment, their tariff payment. However, there's still a question that even if it found illegal, and the Trump administration will try to find Plan B actions, basically means that they will find other federal law to keep the status quo, right? That's what they're saying, according to the U.S. media. And also, they might delay the payment, actual repayment, the schedule, so that maybe the time will be much longer to receive it. So that's the issue. And then, but in terms of domestic politics in United States, maybe some ruling against Trump administration is not good sign for the Republican Party and Trump, President Trump. And internationally, however, trading partners such like Korea, well, you don't have much choice because that we know that the Trump administration will find Plan B or Plan C to maintain the status quo in this moment. So I guess we have to wait and see what really happening and take it from there.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
As South Korea and the European Union look ahead to a more uncertain global landscape, cooperation between Seoul and Brussels takes on even more urgency across security, technology, and economic resilience. Our Oh Soo-young sat down with the EU ambassador to Korea to hear his outlook for the new year.
Seoul and Brussels face greater strategic challenges in 2026, rendering value-based cooperation more crucial than ever. That's according to Europe's top envoy in Seoul, Ambassador Ugo Astuto, speaking with Arirang News.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential that two like-minded democracies and advanced economies such as the EU and Korea work together. As I said earlier, we are facing headwinds in the international scene. So that's a moment where friends and partners need to come together. And we do. I'm glad to say we do.
A veteran European diplomat, Astuto took up his post in Seoul last year after holding senior Asia-Pacific roles at both the European External Action Service and Italy's Foreign Ministry. In his outlook for the new year, Astuto points first to security as the major common challenge ahead.
And when it comes to security interests, we're seeing boundaries are really blurring when it comes to common security interests for the Euro-Atlantic region and the Indo-Pacific region as well. And in terms of North Korea and Russia's military collaboration, how concerned are you and how far do you think it could potentially go?
Look, we are very concerned. This security nexus, which is getting stronger by the day. When you look at the support that North Korea has been offering to Russia and its aggression against Ukraine, we all know that North Korea is getting something in return: economic support, energy, foodstuff, and I sense military technology. We don't know how far Russia can go, but we all know that Russia doesn't have many scruples in that respect. So I think we have reasons to be concerned, and we have reason to try to monitor together this development and to try to mitigate the consequences, not just in the peninsula but worldwide. It's already the strategic concept, the NATO strategic concept of 2022.
He noted Seoul and Brussels are already strengthening their response.
We have a strategic partnership since a number of years, and we have a collaboration which is broad and broadening. Last year, actually in 2024, we signed a security and defense partnership. We are working on that to expand it to cover a number of very relevant grounds, from cybersecurity, foreign information manipulation, interference. And we work together to uphold the multilateral system of international governance.
Shared concerns also extend to economic security. Korea and the EU have set up a working group on emerging economic issues.
Indeed, over the past few years, we have seen economic coercion becoming the norm rather than the exception. Most recently with rare earths, raw materials in general terms. Again, as advanced democracy, we must have reliable supply chains in place, and this means that we can work together at de-risking, for instance, making sure that we have a reliable network of suppliers in place when it comes to raw materials, to those essential items which will be key for the fourth industrial revolution, which are already proving key for the most innovative parts of our economies.
Astuto is working to tighten cooperation in strategic sectors, particularly technology and innovation, given Korea's participation in the EU's €9.5 billion Horizon Research Programme.
And I'm really very happy to congratulate Korea for its joining as a full associate member. It's the first Asian country to do so. I think it's fair to say that particularly in the green and digital transition we can do much. These are the aspects which are most relevant for the transformation of our economies in the coming years. There are topics such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing.
Climate cooperation is another key sector for Astuto.
We see, based on most estimates, that we're not going to respect the targets set in Paris unless we all make collectively a genuine additional effort. And again, I think Korea and the European Union can be pioneers in that respect.
At a time of accelerating change, Astuto says the moment now calls for renewed momentum in cooperation.
We organized not so long ago in Brussels the 4th edition of the Indo-Pacific Forum. And I'm happy to say that Korea is one of the major participants of this gathering. It's about discussing how we can together foster respect for the UN Charter, first of all, but also development, connectivity, sustainable development, how to work together against climate change, against the challenge of pollution, of biodiversity loss. So quite a number of common challenges that we can address together. And all of this is relevant for the work of the team here and myself personally.
Based on strong frameworks and agreements, the ambassador says his mission in Seoul is to ensure that the Korea-EU partnership operates at its full potential. 오수영, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chi Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. We begin in Iran, where activists say Iran's security crackdown on nationwide protests has killed at least 500 people. The activists warn the true death toll may be higher, as authorities have shut down the internet and cut phone lines, making verification difficult. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency said on Sunday that 490 protesters and 48 security force members are among the dead, and more than 10,000 people have been detained over the past 2 weeks of protests. Iran's government has not released an overall casualty figure. In Parliament, Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf warned that U.S. forces and Israel would become legitimate targets if America uses force to protect demonstrators. The protests began on December 28th after Iran's currency collapsed and have escalated into direct calls challenging Iran's theocracy. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned Cuba to make a deal before it's too late. Following the ouster of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, U.S. forces are now seizing tankers to ensure no resources reach Cuba. Trump said on social media on Sunday that Cuba long lived off Venezuelan oil and money, but not anymore. And he declared there will be, quote, no more oil or money going to Cuba, zero. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel responded on X hours later, accusing Washington of turning everything into a business, quote, even human lives. Cuba also said 32 of its military personnel were killed during the American operation that captured Maduro, and it said its officers were in Caracas under a Cuba-Venezuela agreement. In Argentina, raging wildfires in Patagonia have destroyed nearly 12,000 hectares of scrubland and forest in the region's worst environmental disaster in 20 years. Authorities say the fires started almost a week ago and are now putting a power plant and a school at risk, while also damaging rural properties. Officials have not confirmed the cause, but Chubut Province Governor Ignacio Torres says he suspects arson and has offered a 50 million pesos reward for information leading to the culprits. Nearly 300 firefighters and 15 aircraft are currently battling the flames, but drought and strong winds continue to hamper containment efforts. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has erupted, sending lava across the summit area as lava fountains rose up to 50 feet. The U.S. Geological Survey reported a significant spike in volcanic tremors on Saturday, signaling the movement of magma underground. Geologists are now expecting a period of sustained high lava fountains expected to peak by Wednesday. While the lava currently remains contained within the summit caldera, authorities have issued an orange aviation code due to the unpredictable nature of the volcanic activity.
Those on the morning commute faced bitterly cold conditions with the feels-like temperatures in the capital close to minus 15 degrees Celsius, but highs will rise nicely to above freezing mark by the afternoon. However, snow or rain is forecast to affect the central regions mainly, beginning in the capital area before gradually spreading to the rest of the regions. Seoul could see less than 1 centimeter of light snowfall, but Gyeonggi-do could see 5 to 7 centimeters of somewhat heavy snowfall, so please take extra care while traveling. Sub-zero ground temperatures could make the roads icy. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 3 degrees Celsius. Gwangju, Busan both make it to 7 degrees under mostly sunny skies in many regions. Meanwhile, eastern parts of Korea are under dry weather advisory. Meanwhile, snow will taper off by early tomorrow, and this intense cold wave is forecast to ease by midweek.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.